I'm an addict named Alan. And this is definitely one of the highest honors that I've been given since I've been here. I do have the opportunity to do this a lot, but to do this in your own region, it's just totally awesome. I want to thank God first, and then I want to thank the committee for asking me to do this. And the biggest thanks goes out to all of you people, especially the ones in the first 3 rows, because you guys are the reason that I still keep doing this a day at a time. I don't know how many of you guys are brand new to this program, but what I want to tell you is if you are brand new to this, if this is your first meeting or if this is your first convention, please take the time and enjoy this. Take the time and sit back and allow a loving God to work in your life and open your mind to something new. Because if you're new and this is your first trip here, you are in for a ride. Right? I'm talking about a ride that no drug can ever give you. I'm talking about a life that you can have that I would never give up. So if you're new, just sit back, relax, get everything free that you can, bum cigarettes from everybody, tell them you're new. If you hear people saying, if you're new, you get this free, just raise your hand and take it. Tell people that you don't have food, they'll beg for you, they'll buy food for you, they'll do all those things. And if you meet the right person, they'll even let you sleep in their room. And if you're really blessed, you might end up in a relationship out of it. Right? But again, it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be asked to do this in my own region. I know lots of people here. Lots of people know me. I love a lot of you. I like a lot of you. And a lot of you think I'm a prick. And that's all good. Because what I've learned is, through the steps of Narcotics Anonymous, is that we need everybody. And what I've also learned is that everybody's welcome. No matter what you've done, what you think you're going to do, what somebody's done to you, how many people you've slept with, how many people you've robbed from, how many people you've beaten over and over and over again, somebody here will hug you and say, please keep coming back. And it's probably the person that just doesn't know you yet. So whatever you do, just keep coming back here. Whatever you do, just keep coming back. Don't let anybody, and nobody can run anybody out of here, but don't let the disease make you think that they ran you out of here. Because it doesn't happen like that. You run your own self out. A lot of preliminary stuff you have to get out of the way when you do this. This is if you don't know, this is the Friday night opening meeting. It's supposed to be something that pumps you up and gets you ready for the convention, something that sends you out of this room like there's a jolt in your ass to say, yeah, recovery's great, and I just don't have enough money to buy that much cocaine. So what you guys are going to have to do, you're just going to have to get high off of the message, right? Because I know this. I know I got a message, a Narcotics Anonymous message. I know that because I work Narcotics Anonymous program. When they read that clarity statement that we don't want to get confused about alcoholics and cross-addicted and dual-addicted and poly-addicted and chemically dependent and masturbators and overeaters. You do not, believe me, you do not have to worry about that. I'm not cross-addicted or dual-addicted or polychemically unsaturated or whatever. I'm an addict. My name's Alan. And I love Narcotics Anonymous. I go to Narcotics Anonymous, and that's the only place I go. I want to thank all the guys that allow me to sponsor them. I want to thank my sponsor, who at one time in this program was like my father, because I didn't have a relationship with my father, and I'll probably talk about that. For those of you that are new and you think, man, this fucking guy's crying, what's wrong with him? It's because of the steps. I took the steps and I learned how to cry. I took the steps and I learned how to feel. I took the steps and I learned how to get honest. I took the steps and I learned how to stop being a prick. I took the steps, man, I learned how to be a man, to be a friend, to be a father, to be in a relationship that the other person is glad to be in. Right? Because a lot of times you be in a relationship and you're the only person in it. And somebody's trying to get out and it ain't you. And after years of that shit, they finally leave. You think, what the fuck happened? What went wrong? They've been trying to leave your sorry ass for 5 years. And you just figured it out. A lot of you have heard my story. I'll try to change it. Might not work. But I want to thank my sponsor. I love my sponsor. A lot. The man helped me learn to have a relationship when other people couldn't do that. See, it talks about in our literature about how, some of us, we get preyed upon or preyed on. We have hands laid on us. We go to psychiatrists, psychotherapists, analysts, and all these people. I did all that stuff. I remember preachers putting their hands on me and heal this child, and it was like, man, what the fuck is this? But what happened was, man, I got a sponsor and worked the steps, and my life changed. And what I'm going to do real quick is just tell this committee that put this on, thanks, all of you, thanks. Because if you've never been involved with something like this to help put it on, please do. It's a privilege. It's a lot of hard work. It's one of those things that you feel a part of Narcotics Anonymous. You get to meet a lot of people. You get to see a lot of behind-the-scenes things. And when it's all over, you just thank God. Like, man, thank God it's over. And I'll never get involved with that again. And what happens is you're right back into it next year because you're an addict. And you just want more. But my job is to stand here and tell you my story and tell you what happened to me. And hopefully you can relate. Hopefully you can relate in. If you're new, just try to listen to the similarities. Our drugs might have been different. Our hangouts might have been different. The people might have been a little different. But the feelings were all the same. And that's what we got to key in on. You know, I grew up, I never really grew up till many years here. I got big on the eastern shore of Maryland. That's where I was using. And I grew up in a family. There was mom and dad and my older brother and two older sisters. I was the baby. My dad was an alcoholic, a full-blown alcoholic. My mom was like an alcoholic in deep denial. My two older sisters were addicts. My older brother was an addict. And I remember being like 8 years old and my parents always had parties at their house, big parties. And had this one uncle that would show up every time. And he was the guy that fed me my first beer. And after coming to Narcotics Anonymous, I realized why he was my favorite uncle. Because he was giving me beer. And what would happen was he would show up and he would start slipping me these beer. And I would take a little sip and I'd run around. I was 8 years old. I'd run around and I was watching all the party going on and he would slip me another swig of beer and another swig of beer and another swig of beer. And what happened was I started getting drunk at 8 years old. And I remember thinking, man, this is neat because everybody's paying attention to me. Everybody's laughing at me. Everybody's looking at me and talking about me like I was important. And I remember getting to a point where when they would say, yeah, we're having a party tomorrow night or whatever, my first thought was, man, is Uncle Carroll coming? I wanted my dealer to show up. And he would show up, and I would always be like right by Uncle Carroll, and he'd fill me up with this beer. And that's how it started for me. And what happened was, it got real quick for me. I went from like drinking beer and smoking cigarettes at 8 years old, and by the time I was like 11 and 12, I was like doing everything under the sun, and I loved it, you know. But what happened was in that household was a whole nother story. You know, I remember, and everything that I talk about is like, and like my girlfriend talks about in retrospect, only after coming here did I realize even what happened in my life. Because I made up stories. I had all these stories that I thought happened, and it was my side of the story. And then I worked the program and started to get honest, and some of those stories changed. And some of them weren't as bad as I thought they were, and some of them were worse. But what happened is that I grew up in this family, and you know, Dad worked, and he never missed a day of work. He would be drunk all the time, but he never missed a day of work. Mom worked, and she would do the home stuff, the clothes and the dishes, and all of us kids would just do what we did. We went to school and we did our little things. But we all started using, and things just got ugly. I mean, everybody here knows what happens, you know. And I remember talking about things. I've talked about this a lot of times, just talking about things that happened to me in my life that kind of set the pace for me to go out in the world. And I remember, and I even love this story. It's a story about the little family, because here we were. It was Mom and Dad, the alcoholics, and then the 4 kids of us, me and my brother, my 2 sisters, and we're all using. And it seemed like there were a lot of police officers coming to our house and like dropping off papers and looking for people. And Dad's car was always wrecked, and he didn't know how it got wrecked. And things of that nature were happening more and more all the time. I thought it was normal. Now, the little family across the street, they were like the Beavers. The real name was Lewis, but it was the mom and the dad and the 2 little boys. Now, what this family would do, a lot of times, we would watch them. They would be up, and the husband would come out in the morning, and he would start the car, and he would go back in the house, and he would come out, and the wife would come out, and he would open her door, and he would put her, she'd be in a little dress, and he would shut the door, and the 2 little boys would come out, and they were in like little suits and ties, and they would have little Bibles in their hands, and they would get in the car, and they would ease on down the road. Now, our family was like coming to. Like, I was trying to steal my brother's pot, my sister was trying to steal my shit, my other sister was looking in the refrigerator to see if there was any beer left over from the night before. The car was wrecked. There might be a police officer knocking on the door looking for somebody. But I remember my father looking out the door one day as they were driving off. And we're watching them drive off, and he says, "Those people are weird." Now, I don't know At that point in my life, I don't know. I don't have a clue. All I'm doing is going off what my father's teaching me. These people are weird. I thought we were normal. You know, they would come back a couple hours later, they'd go in the house. I imagine they were eating lunch. They would come out, they'd have shorts on. The father had a t-shirt, they would start cutting grass. The wife was picking flowers. The two boys were doing whatever they were doing, raking, whatever they had to do. And then across the street, here we were. We were drinking, and somebody was in the bathroom smoking pot, and somebody else was in the other bedroom snorting cocaine. So I just took it upon myself to believe that my father was right and these people were weird. Only to learn later, still to this day, I respect that family very much. They have a very tight family unit. The two boys grew up. I mean, they weren't like me. They just didn't get big. They grew up. They had jobs the whole time they were through school. They got married. They had cars. They bought homes. They had children. They pushed their children in strollers. They played ball with them. And I've watched all of this. I remember later, after being married a couple times, having a couple children by different women, being backed up on child support, get ready to go to jail, no car, dead insurance, dead tags, moving back in with mom and dad at like 30 years old. And then watching these guys pull up in their brand new vehicles with their wife and their children in strollers and looking out the door, and my father's still saying, people are weird. But I was able to look at the truth and say, here I am, however old I was, 2 kids, backed up child support, no vehicle, or a wrecked vehicle, dead tags, whatever it was, failed relationships everywhere, right? I was able to, after this program, say, Dad, those people aren't weird. We are. Something's wrong with us. Because it talks about in the first step, it says something about, and I'm probably going to turn a couple pages and then I won't find it and then I'll say what it says. Anyway, it says in there, things like this happen and we might ask ourselves, could it be the drugs? Could it be the drugs? Anyway, what happened was I moved out of that house several times. Used long and hard enough for me. You know, I started when I was like 8 and like 16 years. And the whole time I remember being in school. I remember my parents telling me. I remember my mother telling me. I remember school teachers, guidance counselors, probation officers, judges telling me all the same things. You keep hanging out with them people, this is going to happen. You do those things, this is going to happen. Jails, institutions, and death. And in my mind, I knew that I was different. And it would never happen to me. I knew that. And I remember reaching a point in my life. You're talking about a little guy on the Eastern Shore, a little red-headed guy with big ears that was real skinny, that was afraid of everything but wouldn't let you know that. Ending up, right, in Suitland Park in D.C., southeast D.C. Wow. I'm talking about ending up there at like 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning with a pistol, running down the street, chasing a little vanilla extract bottle. could it be the drugs? Now, I'm talking about a place, and the literature says anyone may join us, regardless of age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, or lack of religion. I'm talking about a place, Southeast D.C., Suitland Park. This is a place where white people, shouldn't be, noontime's a good time to leave. Right? And I'm talking about little old me being there at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, running down the street with a pistol like John Wayne or somebody because of a vanilla extract bottle. Something's wrong with that shit. But what happened was, the last day that I used, I ended up blacking out and driving on a tractor trailer. Lots of things happened in between that. Lots of things. Marriages, children, leaving, abandoning people, creating fourth-step material for my children. Right? Because that's what we do even when we get clean. We create fourth-step material for our children, and we don't even realize it. And I'm talking about having 2 daughters. And a can of PCP was more important. A little bag of cocaine was more important. Christmas wasn't Christmas. Thanksgiving wasn't Thanksgiving. Birthdays weren't birthdays. Because the disease of addiction said, you got to get one more. And what happened was, I ended up having all those feelings that we talk about. The loneliness, the hopelessness, the despair, the degradation, the isolation. I'm talking about feeling so low that at the end of the road, begging God, please, if I've got to live like this, I can't do it anymore. God saw fit to put a tractor trailer in front of my truck. I ended up coming to Narcotics Anonymous with a little bit of clean time through some other help, which does not belong here. And if you feel a need to share about other places at this podium, be nice. I came here, and I remember hearing things. I remember hearing sponsorship. I remember service and steps. And all I wanted to do was ride my motorcycle and go to strip joints and try to pick up every woman that would even look at me. And I'm going to talk about that because I hear a lot of people talking about, don't get in a relationship for your first year, and women stick with the women and the men stick with the men. And, the funny thing is you get a sponsor that's been in 40 relationships, and then they want to tell you, stay out of a relationship. Where they got like 9 kids by 12 different people. What you need to do is stay out of a relationship because that shit don't work. I say to get in as many relationships as you can. Because those are the things that are going to make you grow. If you're going to be a plumber, fuck with pipes. But it says in the It Works How and Why book, the 3rd step, it says, as we experience this new way of life we begin to realize that recovery is a priceless gift. Very priceless. We learn to trust. As we do, we open the doors to intimacy and develop new relationships. That's in the third step. I know people that have been new and got in relationships and have stayed clean for as long as I have. I know people that came here and didn't get in a relationship and used within a day. Do I know what works? I know what works for me. And when I got here, I was fucking. A lot of times, that's the first thing that starts to work when we get clean. For me to deprive you of your pain is not right. You got to figure that out. Because if you're new and you get in relationships, believe me, the only thing I can tell you is that pain will come. And what I can tell you is make sure you got a sponsor and some step work and some traditions and some service positions in your life, because that's what's going to make you grow. Talks in their literature that pain is what motivates us. If I got clean and didn't have any pain, I'd probably still be stuck right where I was. Dumb as a clam and thinking I know everything. But I got here and they said get a sponsor, and I didn't know what one was. I was afraid to ask anybody. And a friend of mine told me, he said, "Do you know what you need?" I thought he was going to tell me I needed a woman. And he said, "You need a sponsor." I remember going to meetings and I saw this guy, and he had long hair, and he talked about step work. He talked about traditions. He talked about service work. And he talked about not using. And he talked about relationships. He talked about robbing banks, carrying pistols. I could relate to that shit. And he said, "Fuck every other word." And I said, "That's my man." And he's still my sponsor today. And see, he's here, I can't lie. I believe in the steps. I believe in the steps of Narcotics Anonymous. I believe in having an open, honest relationship with a sponsor. I'm talking about the truth. Telling him the truth. You know, but what I'm also talking about is him telling me the truth. See, I remember what years clean ended up working in a treatment facility, ending up sleeping with one of the clients, calling my sponsor and saying, "We need to talk." And I remember telling him, "Look, man, this is what's up. You know, me and this girl, bang, bang, bang." He said, "You fucking fool." And my head said, "He don't know what he's talking about. He knows nothing." I wish I would have listened, because the pain came. But thank God for it, because I got steps in my life that allow me to turn that stuff over and pull the positive out of it. You know, I went through a lot of pain with that. Anyway, I believe in the steps. I believe in the literature of Narcotics Anonymous. I believe in service work. I believe in going to meetings. I believe in going to meetings. I believe in going to meetings. And if you didn't hear me, I believe in going to meetings. The last day that I used was in 1986. And I believe in going to meetings. My girlfriend and I, in the house, we have over 31 years clean. And every day, we try to get to a meeting. Not just one every other week or one a week. It's not, are we going to a meeting? It's what meeting are we going to? Because I've had too many friends that decided that they didn't need to go to meetings every day. And what happens is, if we don't need to go every day, then we don't need to go every other day. And then we damn sure don't need to go once a week. And then we don't need to go at all. I haven't met anybody yet that has left this program and found a new way to live and stay clean. If they did, they probably didn't even belong here. And what I mean by that is they probably weren't addicts. Because I know for me, if it feels good, looks good, smells good, tastes, it ain't even got to fucking do that. If it just makes me feel okay, I'll run with it. I'm talking about fishing, I'm talking about TV, I'm talking about sex, I'm talking about ice cream, I'm talking about masturbation, I'm talking about porn movies, porn magazines, I'm talking about lust, I'm talking about shopping, I'm talking about gambling, I'm talking about stealing. Anything to get me outside of me, I will overdo. I remember not long ago, and this is crazy as hell, I had this job, and at night I ran this like $1 million facility. I was like one of the only two people there. And I thought, this is nuts, I thought that they were getting over on me. I'm in this building with computers and all kinds of shit. I started stealing. I sat in my office and I said, I'm taking something. Because they owe me. Now I'm talking about with a program, with steps. I started stealing laundry detergent. But I wouldn't take the whole box. I would get little baggies and scoop it in, put it in my coat, and when everybody came in the morning, I was out the door with my coat. See you guys later. I would go home, and in my laundry room, I would have my regular laundry detergent in a big box that we bought. And then I had all these little bags that I was stealing. And I wouldn't use them because I wanted to see how much I was getting them back. Now, I don't know about you, but that's the kind of insane shit that I will do just because I think somebody is getting over on me. Crazy shit. Look. I've been married a couple times. I told you that. I got 2 children. Never was in their life. I was the guy that would beat you, cuss you, spit on you, do anything I wanted to do to you, expect you to have sex with me when you didn't want to, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to. Did all those things. Treated people like animals. Disrespected every person I came in contact with. And I got into Narcotics Anonymous and worked some steps and started to learn what a man's supposed to be like. I remember there was a time, I went to a meeting one time and I heard this guy raise his hand and he said, I know I'm really in recovery because I'm putting the cap back on the toothpaste. And I thought, what in the hell has that got to do with recovery? And I went home, and I'm in the bathroom, and I'm ready to go to bed, and I open the drawer, and there's the toothpaste with no cap and toothpaste all over the drawer, and I'm thinking, that's what the fuck he's talking about. Because I remember going to your house and pissing on your toilet seat and leaving. Never thought about wiping it up. I remember always thinking that the toilet seat was supposed to be up. Always. I remember thinking that she was always supposed to do the clothes. She was always supposed to do the dishes. She was always supposed to clean. It was my job to be an asshole. And I did it very eloquently. as much as I could. I've learned, since I've been here, what I've learned mostly about relationships is what you want in a relationship is what you better be willing to become. I remember having like 10 years clean. And I'm talking about sponsorship. I'm talking about steps, and I'm talking about a loving God. See, remember I was talking about the little family across the street. I was raised with no God. Not a religious God, no God at all. I didn't know anything about it. I knew two things about a God. One was if you did that, God would get you. And if you did that, you were going to hell. And that's all I was ever told about God. What I've learned since I've been here is that God is all loving, all caring, all forgiving, and everything positive that I can think of. I've learned that since I've been here. People talk about God's will. They don't know what God's will is. I don't know what God's will is. I know what it's not. It tells us in our literature what God's will is clearly. In the It Works How and Why book in step 11, page 112, it says, we see that regardless of the presence or absence of material success in our lives, we can be content. We can be happy and fulfilled with or without money, with or without a partner, with or without the approval of others. We've begun to see that God's will for us is the ability to live with dignity, to love ourselves and others, to laugh and to find great joy and beauty in our surroundings. Our most heartfelt longings and dreams for our lives are coming true. These priceless gifts are no longer beyond our reach. They are, in fact, the very essence of God's will for us. That's what God's will is, for me. You might not believe so, but for me it works. I'm talking about a guy that had dreams of like having a family, that had dreams of not only just having a family, but having a family. You know what I'm talking about? Like having something. Having some love and some compassion and some respect. And I tried to have that several times, and I probably always messed it up. Through Narcotics Anonymous, I've got a God in my life that loves me more than I could ever love myself. I've got two beautiful daughters. I was raised that you beat people down. That's what you do. If you can't get it, you beat them. If you can't get it, you steal it. If you know what I mean, you take it. And I remember having like 8 or 10 years clean. And I used to take my children to meetings with me. And I remember I had my youngest daughter with me, and I went to pick up my oldest daughter. You're talking about a guy that got arrested clean and sentenced to a violence class. I got kicked out of the violence class because I wanted to beat up the violence instructor. That's the God's honest truth. And I remember going to pick up my oldest daughter. She was 12 years old at the time. And her mother said, I need to talk to you for a minute. And she made my daughter leave the room, and she went out to the truck, and I said, what's up? And she said, well, I need to tell you something before you hear about it. And this woman proceeded to tell me how her boyfriend had raped my 12-year-old daughter. And I remember thinking murder. And a lot of thoughts went through my head. And I remember going to a meeting. And I remember there was a guy there, and we didn't really get along at that time. And he hugged me. He knew something was wrong. He said, are you okay? And I said, no. And he hugged me. And he said, I'm here for you if you need me. And I went home and I called my sponsor. And I remember telling him what had happened. And the first thing out of his mouth was, you're powerless. And I said, I don't want to hear that. I want you to tell me that I can go kill this guy, and everybody in Narcotics Anonymous will bring me cigarettes and cupcakes. And he said they probably will for a while. He said, but what you got to remember is what happens the next time something happens to your daughter. Who's going to be there? And I remember working through those issues, and it was hard. It didn't happen overnight. And like the literature talks about, age, race, sexual identity, creed, religion, lack of religion. I remember there was two brothers in the program, James and Larry. And they were very, very strong black men in recovery. And they loved me through that. And me and one of the men got very, very close. And I remember calling him and telling him what happened. And he told me to come over to his house. And I went there, and this man let me cry on his shoulder and blow snot all over his shirt. And he wouldn't let me go. He said, I love you, and we'll get through this together. And we did. We got through it. But what happened was, a couple months later, 3 months later, I remember walking into a store one day, and who's coming out the door, and we almost touched noses, was the guy that raped my daughter. And I remember I froze. And I think he saw a look in my eyes, and he went around me and left. And I remember going to a meeting and sharing about it. And I remember people coming up and hugging me after the meeting, saying they loved me and that it would be okay. Because that's what Narcotics Anonymous does. We love you until you learn to love yourself. And through the steps of Narcotics Anonymous, I've learned to love myself a little bit. I don't really love myself all the time, but I like myself a hell of a lot better than I ever have. You know, through this process, lots of things like that have happened. The last few years has been wild. You know, I remember thinking that everything was fine. I found out, I went to the doctor for this job, and said my heart was trying to explode. So they gave me some blood pressure medication. They sent me to another doctor. Come to find out I had this kidney disease in both kidneys were going. Sent me to another doctor to give more blood. They called me, said I had hepatitis C. Sent me to a liver specialist to get a liver biopsy. They called me several days later, said you got cirrhosis of the liver. And it took a lot to deal with all that. You know, not too long ago, I was at work and I came home and I wasn't feeling good. And I went to get in the shower and I went blind. And after a little while, it came back. I had to go to the doctor and I had a stroke. And I got to tell you, I'm by 3 doctors, I'm legally 100% disabled. But I get up every day and go to work. Because that's what Narcotics Anonymous has taught me. They used to say, go to a meeting every day, don't pick up, get a sponsor, work the steps, and get a fucking job. So that's what I do. I just show up. Sit on the porch in the rocking chair and smoke dope and shit and talk to the grandkids like, yeah, I remember in the day. And it's like, who did we ever think was going to buy the house and buy the rocking chair? Because we weren't. But I remember thinking that shit, and I always wanted to like live on the water and have a boat and a pier and all this crazy shit while I was using. And it talks about in here, our heartfelt dreams are coming true. And I always wanted that relationship that was really, really good, and with good sex, of course. But, I just wanted, it had to be really wild and crazy, because I'm not like a real easy type guy. What I can tell you today, and I've had, believe me, ask my sponsor, ask people that know me, I've had relationships in my life that were completely fucking nuts. I'm talking nuts. Crazy nuts. Right? Stayed in them, kicked them out, brought them back, got kicked out, brought back. I remember one time being in a fucked up relationship so long, right, going back. And last time I went in, I took my bags, and she said, aren't you going to unpack? I said, no, you're going to kick me out tomorrow anyway. Why unpack? There's no sense in unpacking. And look, the next day she said, you got to go. I grabbed my bags, and out the door I went. But I learned through that. Got to a point in my life where I just said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to be single. I'm going to jerk off every day. I don't want nobody in my life. I'm okay. I just go home, jerk the fuck off, go to bed, not worry about nothing. And ended up, right, going to this dance, and this woman walked in, and she attacked me. That's how it was. And we've been inseparable ever since. And we probably have the healthiest thing that I know of. And if I know you, I'm not squashing your relationship. I'm just saying we got something that's very, very healthy. Very loving, very caring, very spiritual, very program-oriented. She sponsors a lot of women. I sponsor a lot of guys. It's always step work. It's always tradition work. It's always conventions. We do a lot of traveling. We get to do this a lot. And I love it. I love doing stuff like this. I'm not one of those people that's afraid to get up here and share with you how I feel and what's happened to me in this process. I love this shit. Because what happened was, I was like somebody that just asked God, if I got to live like this, I can't take it anymore. Now I'm telling God, if I got to live like this, I don't know how much more I can take. Because the shit's so good, I'm ready to fucking explode. I'm talking about getting ready to move into a house on the water. The boat's already there. I'm talking about loving life. I'm talking about a life. Look, I don't know about you, but you can ask my girlfriend. I wake up singing. I wake up whistling. I put my green long johns on, look like a fucking clown. Run down the steps talking like Donald Duck. Happy as a pig in shit. Go to work. Tired and hurting and beat up, come home, go to work on the house till 11 o'clock at night, come home, happy, beat up, talking like Donald Duck. I'm talking about having a life that is fucking unmanageable. Unmanageable. In my head, I'm like, how do I do it? I need 40 more hours in a day. But I get done what I get done. I'm talking about working with people that it's all about recovery. The whole job is full of recovery, except where we work. We work in the hood. We work with the drug dealers. We watch them deal dope. And I get a sense of gratitude every day. I'm talking about having a feeling. Look, newcomers, old-timers, you want to use. Look, think about this shit. Think about this. I always think about this whenever I used to get the thoughts of using. I think about my pillow. Laying in bed. I usually got 2 or 3 pillows. But I'm talking about laying in bed, even if I was by myself, with my pillow. Nice and warm and soft, and smelling good. And then think about using. You won't have that pillow. I ain't giving up my fucking pillow. For no hit, or no drink, or no shot. I ain't giving it up. The shit is nice. I'm talking about, look, I'm talking about somebody that used to go into 7-Eleven at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if any of you remember it. They might still have them. I don't know. They used to have microwaves with these cheeseburgers and shit that come in these plastic bags. You put them in the microwave for 3 minutes, the bag blows up. You open it up, steam comes out. You eat them and they taste like shit. Now, when you steal these things, you can't heat them up. So, what I'm talking about is a guy that used to go into 7-Eleven and steal these things and walk down the road and eat them, trying to break off a piece with my buddy, right, and telling him, you know what, these things ain't half bad. Now, when you get to a point like that, you might want to go back to the basic text in the first step where it says, could it be the drugs? But look, I ain't had to eat a frozen cheeseburger since I've been clean. I have not had to sleep by choice on the street or in my car or in your car or on the floor one night since I've been clean. And that's over 16 years. Not one night. Not one day have I had to go without food. Not one day have I said, where am I going to get the next one? How am I going to get the next one? Not one day have I had to do that. Not one day. I'm talking about just before this meeting, going to McCormick and Smith and looking at the menu and saying, what do I want? What do I want to eat? Some of my biggest problems today are, do I get the filet? Or should I get the New York strip? What shoes should I wear? What pants should I wear? What convention should we go to? Should we go to New York? Vegas? Where? They become problems. If those are the only problems I got to worry about, thank NA. Because we're doing pretty damn good. Look, we went from basements to ballrooms. Look at this fucking place, man. From basements to ballrooms. Good God Almighty. We're not looked down upon anymore. People respect us. Convention committees call and say, it's NA, can we come back? Sure. Come back. You people drink a lot of coffee. Come on back. And you know what else? You people spend a whole hell of a lot of money. Because as soon as you quit using, you get an immediate pay raise. Look, I'm talking about a guy that always dreamed about living on the water. I'm talking about a guy that's getting ready to do that. We're just doing so many things to the house that we want to do. We're making it like we want to make it. We go there sometimes 6 o'clock in the morning. Check this shit out. Just to feed the fucking ducks. They walk up in the yard. And we're like throwing corn and shit. And they're just happy to see us. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. I'm talking about a guy that finally, I believe, finally has found the relationship that I longed for. And love her right to death. I'm talking about a guy, look, she's a massage therapist. Baltimore's best. So you know what that means for me. What that means is I get to rub her feet every fucking night. That's what that means. But what Narcotics Anonymous has taught me is, you know what? I love to do it. I'm talking about a guy that used to go to bed before she did just to warm her side of the bed up in the winter. Then we got a heating blanket. I'm talking about a guy that just the other day, Thanksgiving, took her mother and daughter to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. Never did that shit. Parents never fucking liked me. Damn sure didn't want to meet my parents. Where did this child come from? But I'm talking about, I'm talking about her mother, 70-some years old, and her father died years ago, and her mother saying, I don't want to go because I don't know them, and I'll feel out of place, and I don't want to go. And I'm talking about a guy that has gone to his parents' house every year for Thanksgiving. And then it was a big thing going on. It was like, what are we going to do? Your mom doesn't want to go. She's going to cook Thanksgiving dinner and be home by herself. And my girlfriend said, you know what, I can't do that. So that day I woke up without her knowing it, and I called my mother and said, you know what, I got a problem. I don't think I can come. Because Denise's mom doesn't have anybody. And I'm going to go there. And then I'm talking about Denise calling me a couple hours later and saying, Mom said she'd go. See, as soon as I let go and turn it over and stop trying to control shit, God said, we'll hook it up. Look, took her mother there, and her mother and my mother looked like two old crows. They would not shut up. We're trying to leave. They're still talking, showing pictures to each other. We'll come back. This is great. And it's like unbelievable. And her mom looked at me and said, God, I'm so glad I came. I'm talking about a program that is so unbelievable. I'm going to read this real quick. I know that the mind can only absorb what the ass can endure. This is in our Just for Today, and I love this. My sponsor pointed this out to me, and it's for those newcomer people or old-timers, and it's January the 25th in the Just for Today. It's called An Added Gift. It says, we see it happening among us every day. This miraculous turnabout is evidence of a spiritual awakening. It says we watch them walk into their first meeting defeated. Their spirits broken. Their suffering is obvious, and their desire for help even more apparent. They collect a welcome chip and go back to their seats, shaken by the effort. It says we see them again, and they seem a little more comfortable. They found a sponsor and are attending meetings every night. They still won't meet our glance, but they nod their heads in recognition as we share. We notice a spark of hope in their eyes, and they smile uncertainly when we encourage them to please keep coming back. A few months later, they're standing straight. They've learned how to make eye contact. They're working the steps with their sponsor and are healing as a result. It says we listen to them share at meetings. We stack chairs with them afterward. A few years later, they're speaking at a convention workshop. They've got a wonderful, humorous personality. They smile when they see us. They hug us, and they tell us that they could never have done it without us. And they understand when we say, nor could we without you. Please, please keep coming back. I love you.